Well, it's that time of year, folks, when every testosterone-filled man leaves his cave, his wife, his concubine that he dragged there to torture himself with, as well as the comforts of 3 screaming children, to venture out into hostile territory in hopes of bagging the white-tailed deer. You know, I say every man tongue-in-cheek because ever since we lost our minds during the turn of the last century and gave women the right to vote, which was a dark hour in history if there ever was one, we have since furthered the collective mental breakdown by now putting firearms into their hands as well. No use in brooding over the past. What's done is done. So we may as well invoke our superior skills of adaptation and actually become the vegetables they already believe us to be. Besides, there's not anything wrong with having a little extra meat on the table now, is there? You can even get one of those cute, lacy kitchen aprons and do a little role playing, okay? And, just make sure the noose is really around your neck so that when the ground gives out under your feet and you plunge into the abyss of the American legal system, you can at least feel good that you have done your part for the sake of peace in the home. But what's more than that, He-Man? You, after all, have the keys to the truck. So her attempts to castrate you publicly by driving around town with her quarry strapped to the hood will have been completely disabled. All right? This is a social political war, and you, man, must win this war at all costs. Now, speaking of social political wars, you animal rights activists are something else. You cry, whine, throw your purses over the fact that man has chosen to eat rather than be eaten. You feel sorry for the frightened creatures, as if they have no real reason to die. Do you people realize what they do out there in the woods? They crap all over the place. In fact, Freud would have a field day, pardon the pun, with the bizarre sex rituals they participate in this time of year, rubbing small trees to their death, scratching out holes into which the males defecate, and then the females come along and urinate in. All of this just so some four-legged chick can say, I'm available, but you're going to have to work for it. Why can't they just snort and grunt at each other like us humans? Besides all of this, one justifiable reason they must be killed is that they are depressed and suicidal most of the time anyway. Tens of thousands of times each year, these bipolar creatures decide to end it all by running headlong into the highways and oncoming traffic. Apparently, these are probably the lesser bucks that were spurned at the local crap hole and decided that life was not worth living if they could not get their rut on. The female victims killed by cars are obviously the result of accidental death, running from the gang of thugs, following after the scent they left behind in the woods. What is it with females anyway? They play the game up to a point and then decide they don't like the rules when they discover that the rules were formed by the males to begin with. Then they run away from reality, dragging even other species into their dysfunctional relationships with nature. Now, as crazy as all of this may seem, we have not yet ended our descent into Wonderland. Men, it's time we had to talk about protocol out there in the woods. I understand that some of you, your choices in weapons are a little primitive because you need a little extra thump and a little extra accuracy to even the odds in your favor. But for crying out loud, do you need a 460 Weatherby to bring down a 150-pound deer? Or do you just need to spend some more time at the gym rather than, say, Dunkin' Donuts? Perhaps we might ask the question as to the fact whether it is not your mind that is primitive when you think your broadhead has to be the size of Conan the Barbarian's battle axe. Of course, when you bring it into the processor with body parts hanging off, he's supposed to work some miracle like Aaron and Moses, restoring a bloody shredded hole the size of a small car garage. Using a sensible weapon instead eliminates the next primitive question, which will be forthcoming. Is that all the meat there is when you come to pick it up? The next thing in protocols of woodsmanship is that there are plenty of deer out there to be had. Therefore, you could let the one running away from you go instead of creating your own secret butt and gut sauce recipe out there in the field. I have processed more than 1,000 deer, and the guy who launches a round up the rear end of a deer always wants roasts out of the hams. This is just plain retarded. Speaking of rear ends, there is a difference in demographics among hunters, say from the north to the south. The hunters up north always remove the rectums and piss bag when they field dress the deer. Here in the south there must be some form of soul tie or souvenir value because they leave it up to the processor to remove. Perhaps it's a difference in education that the southern hunter just doesn't get it and he just can't figure it out. Look, guys, you have got to make your request known because I doubt the processor has a sticker that says butthole to place on the package. Besides, how do you know that it is just not thrown in with the burger? Yep, always wondered why that venison had that gamey flavor, and now you know. So herein are my observations on the subject. If wading through my thoughts on the subject seems a bit unsettling to you, I suggest next time you bring a life jacket. Happy hunting.